Bell by Pamela Murray Jones, Illawong, 2234. Narrated by Chloe Schwank. It was an unlikely kind of friendship. Bell must have been about 65 years old, a veteran of World War I in which he served with the Light Horse, and I was a precocious preschooler. While I didn't discover until much later that Bell had emphysema, I knew he was ill because my mother worried I'd be bothering him when I begged to go next door and see him. I also knew that was the reason most mornings I would find him sitting on his side veranda, dressed in a checked dressing gown and felt slippers, his bare blue-veined ankles poking below the legs of his pajamas. The newspaper would be on his knee, folded open at the games page, and he would have a pencil and paper waiting for me on the side table so I could help him solve the crossword puzzle. It was probably the junior crossword, and Bell always pretended he really looked forward to my help to solve it. "What do you think?" he'd say. "A baby-bringing bird, 5 letters." Or, "Path for a car, 4 letters. Any ideas?" After an hour, my piece of paper would be filled with words as I helped with the answers. It was a particularly cold morning when Bell decided it was time I graduated to Scrabble, and we retreated to the dining room where he spread out the board and tiles on a green felt-covered card table and explained the rules. Scrabble kept us going until I heard my mother calling me over the fence to come home for lunch. That night I went to bed with words going round and round in my head, eager to continue where we had left off. It would often take us 2 mornings to finish a game, and Bell was always patient, discussing what words might work with the tiles I had. I didn't have much time to spend with Bell after I started school, but there was also Mrs. Bell, and she was the part-time librarian in our town. The library was a great and wonderful mystery to me, a large, sombre room above the School of Arts where my grandmother sometimes took me when she borrowed a book. Mrs. Bell was a tall, slightly built woman with grey hair tied into a bun, the epitome of a librarian, and I found her somewhat intimidating. Consequently, I was overawed when she suggested I visit her in the library when I started school. There she presented me with a library card with such ceremony, it was as if she was bestowing a great honour on me. She told me how to use the card, and then chose a book from the shelves for me to read. It was by Enid Blyton, who soon became my favourite author. Over the next 3 years I read my way through all of Enid Blyton's books. By the age of 8, I was reading The Secret 7 and The Famous 5. I became frequently frustrated when I learnt that I had exhausted my allocation of books for the week, or the book I wanted was out, and the borrower was much slower to read and return it than I would have liked. Reading and words became a passion. I read under my blanket with a torch when my mother told me to turn off the light and go to sleep. I read under my desk when I became bored with lessons. I skipped sport in high school to read in the tennis shed. I narrowly missed my bus stop because I had my nose in a book. I kept a book of quotes from various authors and pasted quotes around my bedroom mirror. And quite recently, I found an old exercise book where in my childish hand I had written uncommon words I had come across in my reading and what they meant. I kept a tatty old pocket Oxford dictionary beside my bed and sometimes under my pillow. I credit Bell with my ability to read before I started school and won spelling competitions all through my primary school years. And I wonder what Mrs. Bell would have thought if she had known that I studied and gained 2 degrees in literature and taught literature for 17 years. But neither Bell nor Mrs. Bell, my shortened version of their names that I could not pronounce as a tiny tot, knew any of this. Bell passed away when I was 10. I woke in the middle of the night to see flashing lights reflected on my bedroom ceiling and heard my parents talking to someone in the street. Peeking through the curtains, I saw an ambulance outside, and my mother and father standing in their dressing gowns with Mrs. Bell. I knew then that something awful must have happened and crept back under the bedclothes. Everything changed after Bell died. I would walk past Bell's house, keeping my eyes firmly on the ground, not wanting to see the empty chair on the veranda. And soon after, Mrs. Bell left the library and moved to another part of town to live with her daughter. I still remember the emptiness I felt the first time I saw a new librarian sitting behind the librarian's desk. How I regret I did not have the opportunity to express my gratitude to that elderly couple who nurtured those skills in me that helped me make a living and have given me such pleasure. They largely made me what I am, endlessly curious, a passionate reader of well-written books, and a ferocious reviewer. Perhaps my youthful enthusiasm for words and my joy in discovering literature also contributed something to them. I hope so. The end.